If I could shoot weddings with only one lens, this would be it. After 2 years and over 70 weddings, the Nikon 50mm f1.2 has been my go-to workhorse. From low-light receptions to intimate portraits, this lens delivers. Is it really worth the price? Does the weight slow you down? And is it actually the best wedding photography lens for 2025? Wedding photography is unpredictable. One moment you're in a dimly lit church and the next you're in bright outdoor sun. You need a lens that can handle it all. Hey everyone, my name's Colton and I'm a wedding photographer that's had the opportunity to be able to use plenty of 50mm over the years. Whether it's the 50mm lenses that Nikon makes or the third-party companies like Sigma, I've been able to use my fair share of lenses at that focal length. And if it's one thing that I can tell you, it's that not all 50mm are created equal. Some claim to be fast, others promise sharpness, but this one, it delivers on both. With an ultra-wide f1.2 aperture, lightning-fast autofocus, and a build that feels indestructible, the Nikon 50mm 1.2 is a powerhouse. Let's break down the key features and my first impressions. So when it comes to the Nikon 50mm, the first obvious is that it's a 50mm lens. It boasts an impressive f1.2 aperture with only 8 aperture blades, which normally you want more for super smoothy bokeh in the back, but this lens really outdoes itself when it comes to the smoothness of the bokeh. When this lens is paired with its counterpart in the Z series cameras, the autofocus for this lens is as fast as any of the lenses that I've used in the S line so far. Like most premium Nikon lenses, it's weather sealed. It comes in at 2.4 pounds, which if you compare it to its mirrorless counterpart, the 50mm 1.8, that lens weighs 0.91 pounds, which means that the 50mm 1.2 is almost 3 times as heavy. Now, I didn't always shoot with this lens. Before switching to the 50-1.2, I was shooting with a Sigma Art 50mm 1.4 utilizing the FTZ adapter. While it was good, it lacked the speed and clarity that I needed. Utilizing the F-mount lenses with the FTZ adapter really sacrifices the autofocus capabilities of the Z cameras, and I really felt that. Not only that, Sigma lenses are infamously known for back focusing, and that was something that I really had to deal with dialing in on each one of my cameras when I wanted to use the Sigma lens. And after seeing some of my peers' insane results with the 51.2, I knew I had to make the switch, and I haven't looked back. Some of my first impressions is that this lens is absolutely insane at 1.2. You would think that shooting at such a low aperture would cause so much to be out of focus, but I could be 15 feet from a couple shooting both of them at 1.2 without worrying about the groom's face being slightly behind the bride's face, and they're both tack sharp. And the barrel compression that you get just makes for such beautiful images. When it comes to color rendering with this lens, I find with most of Nikon's lenses, is that there's really no color tint that you have to battle in Lightroom. You're getting true to color photos that look amazing straight out of camera. And maybe it's because I spent the first few years with the Z system using f-mount lenses, the autofocus on this lens seems out of this world. And the last thing I've noticed about it is that it's built like a flagship lens. This lens has been with me through 70 weddings, whether it's inside, outside, in rain, in snow, in heat, and it holds up perfectly, and I haven't yet had an issue with the lens where I need to send it in for repair. Some photographers swear by 35mm, other by 85mm. So why does the 50mm stand out for weddings? The one thing that you've probably heard about the 50mm in every video that you've ever watched about it is that it's the focal length when paired with a full frame camera that's as natural to the eye as possible. So when you look at a photo taken with a 50mm lens, it's gonna feel like you're looking through your eyes. The reason why this is perfect for wedding photography is because you're telling a story that the couple are gonna look back on, that their children are gonna look back on, their grandchildren, and this is gonna go on for generations. So to be able to have these photos taken in a way that our eyes naturally render just makes the comfort and the attachment to the photos that much greater. And with the 50mm, it's not a wide lens, but it's perfect to be able to be used in almost any situations unless you're shooting a wedding in a closet. In most rooms, you have the ability to step back far enough to be able to take photos with it, and you may not be able to get everything in the scene, but it is a great lens to be used alongside a 35 or a 28mm. That way you have one camera with a 28 or 35 and the other with a 50. And the other great thing about the 50mm focal length is that you get perfect compression. There really is no distortion or vignetting on this lens that needs to be fixed afterwards in Lightroom. If I only had to choose one lens for an entire wedding day, this would be it. During the getting ready process, it helps me to capture natural documentary style photos without having to worry about if I have enough light in the room or if it's going to distort the images and make them look wonky. When it comes to the portraits, I know that I'm going to have a tack sharp lens that's going to allow for me to be able to take stunning pictures of my couples and make them feel like models straight out of the pages of a magazine. And when it comes to the detail photos, this lens does an amazing job at capturing the rings, the florals, the decor, and everything that goes along with it. And I get it, tech specs are great, but how about real world results? When it comes to portraits, the sharpness at f1.2 is unreal, and I'm not spending the entire day shooting at 1.2. I'll bring it up to 3.5, 5.6, but when it comes to portraits, there's really something about that f1.2 to 2.0 range that really makes your bride, groom, couple pop in their photos. It just creates this dreamy, cinematic look without overdoing the blur. Now, the one thing that I love about this lens is its low light performance. Have you ever shot a candlelit reception with no flash? This lens eats low light for breakfast. When you can combine it with starlight mode and Z8, autofocus during the parent dances or the speeches is no problem. And speaking of autofocus, this lens never disappoints when it comes to capturing the candid moments throughout the day. Because it's so fast, I'm never worried about capturing these little moments during the ceremony or moments during the first look or just random moments throughout the day, because I know as soon as I lock on to my subject with the autofocus, this lens is ready to go. Every lens has its strengths, but let's be real, no lens is perfect. The Nikon 50mm 1.2 delivers jaw-dropping sharpness, rich color, and buttery bokeh. But is it worth the trade-offs? Before you hit that buy button, let's break down some of the pros and cons, including a few things that might surprise you. Some of the pros, which we've already covered in this video, are that it's insanely sharp, it's got a fast and reliable autofocus, it's great in low light, it's got beautiful color rendering, and it's built to last. And I know what you're thinking, Colton, you've talked about this the entire video, we've heard all the pros, now what's bad about this lens? So one of the bad things is the fact that it weighs 2.5 pounds. And for me, that's not really a problem. When you pair it with my Z9, sometimes it can get heavy, carrying around 6 pounds all day and using it for 8 to 10 hours. But I know a lot of people like to work as lightweight as possible, so carrying around 5 or 6 pounds all day at a wedding could be a lot for them. And if that's something that's concerning to you, then maybe this lens isn't for you. Another con that I haven't mentioned is the price of this lens. Coming in at just over $2,000, this lens isn't a light investment for anyone. Costing almost 4 times more than the Nikon 1.8, you really have to justify spending on this lens. If you're able to bring in enough income with your business and this is just another tax write-off for you, then no problem. But if you have to really weigh out whether or not it's worth spending the money on this lens for yourself, maybe you need to wait until your business or your financial situation is in a better place to be able to purchase it. Another con to this lens is that it's huge. I mean, take a look at it. If you compare this to the f-mount 50mm lens, that lens is probably this big. So this lens is almost double the size. So when you're trying to move through a wedding or any type of event, this lens, if you have it on a strap or if you have it on a belt system and it's attached to your camera, this lens is going to stick out and hit chairs and hit all sorts of things. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you like to keep a light and low profile camera setup, this lens may not be for you. As I've been saying, this lens is incredible, but it's not for everyone. If you're looking for a lens that delivers luxury level results, the Nikon 50mm 1.2 could be the best investment that you make. But if you're after something lightweight or budget friendly, you might want to think twice. Let's talk about who should buy it and who might want to keep looking elsewhere. This lens is perfect for wedding photographers that are looking for a top tier prime lens, portrait photographers who want ultra shallow depth of field, and pros who value quality over weight. This lens is not ideal for beginners as it's too expensive if you're not really committed to the craft. It's not great for travel shooters as it's too big and heavy for casual use. And overall, if you don't like the 50mm focal lengths, it doesn't make sense to justify spending $2,000 on a lens that you might use every once in a while. Now, owning a high-end lens is one thing, but maximizing its full potential is another. If you're not using the right focus techniques, lighting tricks, or handling methods, you could be missing out on what makes this lens truly special. Here are my top tips for getting the absolute best out of the 50-1.2. You want to make sure that you're using 3D autofocus to track your subjects when it comes to using this lens. And I know, not every Nikon Z camera has 3D autofocus, but if you're using the Z9 or the Z8, this is the best mode when it comes to using this lens. And when autofocusing, especially at 1.2, you want to make sure that you're putting the autofocus point on your subject's eyes. There's something about a photo when the eyes are out of focus, everything feels out of focus. So as long as the eyes are tack sharp, it won't matter if the nose or the ear is slightly out of focus, but if you can look into somebody's eyes in a photo and it looks tack sharp, your brain will register it as a photo that's been taken correctly. And because this lens takes in so much light, one of the things that I always have on my camera is the lens hood. I can't tell you how many times a second shooter shows up to a wedding and none of their lenses have the hoods on them. Now, it isn't necessary for every lens, but with this lens, it just takes in so much light that I always keep the lens hood on to make sure that I'm mitigating some of the flares and I can shoot photos backlit without having my subjects completely blown out. And my final tip for maximizing this lens is to just get used to the weight, whether that means you get a really comfortable strap system or belt system that allows for you to manage the weight throughout the day, or even hitting the gym a little bit if the camera's too heavy, because for where this lens lacks in portability, quality, it greatly makes up for it in the photos that it creates. When it comes to anything, seeing is believing. I've shot over 70 weddings with this lens, and it's given me some of my favorite photos of all time. So let me show you what this lens is capable of. 2 years later, and is this lens still worth it? And honestly, I have to say absolutely, but only if you're a serious wedding or portrait photographer. This isn't the lens for you if you're just starting out or you want a lightweight kit. Before you decide to buy, ask yourself, will I use 50mm enough to justify the cost? Am I okay with the weight of this lens during long wedding days? And do I need the absolute best image quality? If you said yes, this lens will definitely change the way that you shoot. So what are your thoughts on the Nikon 50mm 1.2? I'd love to hear from you down in the comment section below. So if you're looking to buy this lens and you found this video helpful, I have an affiliate link in the description below, which at no cost to you will support the channel and get you the lens while helping me do everything that I'm trying to do on this channel in helping to educate photographers and helping them grow their business. And as always, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.